Have you ever felt invisible? Like you're standing on the edge of your own life, watching everyone else move forward while you're stuck in place. You see their laughter, their successes, their joy, and you wonder, when is it my turn? You scream, but no sound comes out. You reach, but your hands grasp at nothing. That was me, trapped in a silence so loud it deafened my own hope. I thought that was my story. But what if the moment you feel most lost is the exact moment you're about to be found?
Where truth meets imagination. Welcome to Facts and Fiction.
My world was painted in shades of gray. Not the poetic, stormy kind, but the dull, faded gray of a forgotten photograph. My name is Elara, and for the longest time, my biggest ambition was simply to make it through the day without the heavy blanket of what if suffocating me. I worked a job that paid the bills but starved my soul, a tiny cog in a giant, indifferent machine. Every morning, the same beige cubicle walls greeted me. Every evening, the same tired reflection stared back from the bus window. My dreams were once vibrant tapestries, woven with threads of adventure, art, and connection. I wanted to paint landscapes that breathed, to write words that healed, to see the northern lights dance in a cold, clear sky. But life, as it often does, had other plans. A sick parent, mounting debt, a relationship that crumbled under the weight of unspoken disappointments. One by one, the colorful threads of my dreams were snipped away, leaving behind a frayed, colorless existence. The turning point wasn't a dramatic explosion, it was a quiet implosion. It was my 30th birthday. No party, no grand celebration, just me, a store-bought cupcake with a single, sad-looking candle, and the deafening silence of my small apartment. As I stared at that tiny flame flickering, a single tear traced a path down my cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness, but of a profound and terrifying emptiness. I had become a ghost in my own story. That night, I didn't sleep. I paced the floor, the ghost of my younger, hopeful self taunting me from every corner. What happened to us, she seemed to ask. Where did we go wrong? In a fit of desperation, I pulled out an old, dusty box from under my bed. Inside were my old sketchbooks, filled with half-finished drawings and forgotten ideas. Flipping through the pages was like meeting an old friend I had abandoned. There was a sketch of a lighthouse standing defiant against a stormy sea, a charcoal portrait of an old man with stories in his eyes, a whimsical drawing of a tree whose branches reached for the stars. My fingers, stiff and unsure after years of disuse, picked up a pencil. It felt foreign, alien. I tried to draw, but my hand wouldn't obey. The lines were shaky, the proportions were wrong. Frustration coiled in my stomach. I wanted to scream, to throw the sketchbook against the wall, to give up and crawl back into my familiar comfort of my gray world. And I almost did. My hand was raised, the sketchbook ready to fly, but then my eyes caught the drawing of the lighthouse. It wasn't perfect. The lines were a little skewed, the waves a bit clumsy, but it was still standing, still shining its light into the darkness. Something inside me shifted, a tiny, fragile spark. The next day, I woke up before my alarm for the first time in years. Instead of scrolling mindlessly through other people's perfect lives online, I took out my sketchbook. I drew my coffee cup. It was terrible, but I did it again the next day, and the next. I drew the wilting plant on my windowsill, the cracked pavement outside my building, the tired faces on the morning bus. Slowly, painstakingly, my hand started to remember. The lines became surer, the shapes more confident. But more importantly, I started to see again. I saw the way the morning light painted golden stripes on my floor. I heard the melody in the rain tapping against my window. The world was slowly starting to regain its color, one pencil stroke at a time. I enrolled in a local art class. Walking in that first day was terrifying. I was surrounded by talented artists, their canvases bursting with life and color. My own felt small and timid. My inner critic screamed at me, "You don't belong here. You're a fraud." I wanted to run, to disappear back into my invisibility cloak. But then I remembered the lighthouse. I took a deep breath, picked up a brush, and squeezed a dollop of brilliant blue paint onto my palette. It felt like a revolution. The journey wasn't a straight line. There were days of crushing self-doubt, days when my paintings felt like mud, days when the gray threatened to creep back in. But this time I had an anchor. Every time I felt myself drifting, I would look at that first clumsy drawing of the lighthouse and remember the feeling of that single spark of defiance.
I started sharing my art online, anonymously at first, just little sketches, paintings of quiet moments. I expected nothing, but then a comment appeared. "This is beautiful. It made me feel something." Then another, and another. People started sharing their own stories, their own struggles. They saw themselves in my art. My quiet little corner of the internet became a sanctuary, a place of shared vulnerability and hope. The girl who was afraid to speak was now communicating with hundreds of people through her art. The woman who felt invisible was being seen in the most profound way. I was no longer just a cog in a machine. I was a creator, a storyteller. The biggest change, however, was internal. The heavy blanket of what if was replaced by the exciting hum of what's next. I quit my soul-crushing job. It was the scariest and most liberating thing I had ever done. I started taking commissions, teaching small art workshops, and saving up for a trip to see the northern lights. Last winter, I stood on a frozen fjord in Norway, the crisp air stinging my cheeks. The sky above was a canvas of deep, velvety black. And then it began. A faint green ribbon appeared, wavering, ethereal. It grew brighter, bolder, dancing across the heavens in shimmering curtains of light. It was more beautiful, more magical than I had ever dared to dream. Tears streamed down my face, but this time, they were not tears of emptiness. They were tears of overwhelming gratitude. Gratitude for the 30-year-old ghost who refused to fade away, for the shaky hand that picked up a pencil, for the courage to squeeze that first drop of blue paint,